Hello, friends. This is Confessions with Amy. Here we share new confessions every day.
They stopped seeing me long before they let me go. Not all at once. It was gradual. Like erosion. Like a slow leak of air from a sealed room. One day, you notice it's harder to breathe. But by then, the damage is already done. My name is Blair Kavanaugh. I'm 33. And for 4 years, I worked at a consultancy firm in Portland called Faro & Strategies. When I started, I thought I was stepping into a future. Something I could build. I had a degree, a decent resume, and more energy than sense. At first, everything felt promising. New people, long brainstorm sessions over overpriced sandwiches, post-it notes lining the glass walls of the conference room. I thrived in chaos. I made myself indispensable. I wasn't just a team player, I was the damn net holding the team together. I remember the first time I pulled off something huge. A shipping company in Tacoma was on the fence about signing with us, $1 million account. No one could close it. I stepped in. I listened. I asked questions no one else bothered to. And I got them. The day the contract came through, I waited, foolishly, for a moment. A look. A word. Maybe even Alora, my boss, would call me into her office. She didn't. The win was announced in the all-hands like it fell from the sky. Just, we're excited to welcome Trask Logistics to the Faro family. Great job, team. Team. It was always the team. Even when the team was me, behind a screen at midnight, writing proposals while my dinner went cold. I told myself it didn't matter. That I wasn't in it for applause. But here's the truth. When you give everything to a place, and it gives you silence in return, it changes something inside you. Year 2, I brought in more clients. Bigger ones. Ones that required delicate handling, real strategy, relationship building over months. No bonus. No title change. Just another check-in with Alora where she said I was exceeding expectations, and then changed the subject. So in year 3, I asked for a raise. I rehearsed what to say. Printed graphs. Client retention numbers. ROI from the accounts I handled. I wore my navy blazer, the one that makes me look like I know exactly who I am. I sat in that glass box of an office with my back straight and my heart pounding. Alora, polished, composed, tapping her pen against her legal pad, barely glanced at my papers. "Blair, you're doing very well," she said. "But this just isn't the quarter for changes like that." Then she smiled. That tight, practice corporate smile. The kind that doesn't reach the eyes. I nodded. I told her I understood. But I didn't. Not really. That night, I walked home in the rain, without an umbrella. I remember it so clearly. My heels soaked, my mascara smudged, my fingers numb from clutching my useless presentation. And in my chest, something small and sharp and quietly cracking. Year 4, I didn't ask again. I stopped going the extra mile. Still did the job better than most. But I stopped volunteering for late nights, stopped giving away ideas in meetings, stopped pretending I didn't notice when people took credit for my work. I wasn't bitter. I was just done begging to be seen. Then one morning over coffee, my college friend Sierra told me about an opening at her firm in Seattle. She said the culture was different. Transparent. Human. That people actually got promoted. I laughed. Brushed it off. I wasn't ready. But the idea planted itself. Quietly. And it grew. A few weeks later, I found myself on a Zoom call with a recruiter named Tyson. Friendly, sharp, didn't waste words. We talked for 25 minutes. I told him I wasn't sure I was ready to leave. He said, "You don't have to be ready. You just have to be curious." I was. The call ended. I closed my laptop. I went back to work. I didn't tell a soul. 3 days later, Alora called me into her office. And what happened next? I still think about it. Sometimes at night. Sometimes when everything is quiet and safe. It was the day the game changed. The day I stopped being a ghost and started becoming something far more dangerous. It was a Wednesday. The kind of gray Portland morning that feels like the city forgot to wake up. Sky like wet concrete. Air thick with the smell of last night's rain and too much silence. I was already on edge when I walked into the office. Something felt off. You know that feeling when you enter a room and it's just a few degrees colder than it should be? When conversations stop half a second too early. When people avoid eye contact, not obviously, but just enough to feel it. I felt that. My desk was the same as always, second row from the window, close enough to the kitchen to hear every damn time someone used the espresso machine. I powered on my laptop. Open Slack. Emails. My to-do list. Everything routine. Then I saw the calendar invite. 10:30 a.m., 1:1 with Alora, private. No subject. No agenda. No warning. And just like that, my pulse changed. Not a spike. Just a low, heavy thud. Like the bass line of a song you don't realize is building until it's already under your skin. I stared at the screen for a few seconds too long. I've had one-on-ones with Alora before. Dozens. But this one felt different. Not scheduled days in advance. Not a soft coffee catch-up. Just dropped on my calendar like a trapdoor. At 10:29, I stood up, smoothed my sweater, and walked down the hallway toward her office. Her assistant, Candace, didn't look up from her screen. Usually she smiled. Not today. Alora's door was already open. She was waiting. The room was cold. Not in temperature, in atmosphere. Alora sat with her legs crossed, back straight, her phone face down on the desk, which she never did. She motioned for me to sit, like a surgeon about to deliver a prognosis. I sat. She didn't waste time. I understand you've been interviewing elsewhere. No small talk. No lead-in. Just a straight shot, like a bullet to the ribs. I blinked. Took a breath. I had one conversation, I said calmly. A casual one. Off the clock. Alora tilted her head slightly, that snake charmer expression she uses when she wants to look thoughtful, but is really just coiling inward. That's not how we define loyalty here. I said nothing. She continued. When someone's exploring options, it sends a message. One that destabilizes the team. Funny, I thought. No one cared when I stayed until midnight for 4 years straight. When I onboard new hires without being asked. When I kept clients from walking away. Clients I brought in. But one quiet Zoom call? That's betrayal? I wanted to laugh. I didn't. Then she said it. The line that would echo in my head for months. You're not loyal, Blair. And we can't keep people who aren't loyal. Not we can't afford to. Not this is hard. Not even thank you for your work. Just you're not loyal. As if I was a dog who bit the hand that fed me. She slid a plain envelope across the desk. Termination papers. Effective immediately. I stared at it. The moment felt suspended, like time was stretching, warping, holding its breath. Then I heard the knock. I turned. Security. 2 men in dark blue polos, expressionless, standing just outside the office door. I looked back at Alora. She didn't flinch. You'll be escorted out today, she said almost gently. Your personal items will be sent to your address. That was it. I stood. My legs felt stable, but everything else, my breath, my chest, my sense of gravity, had gone numb. I walked past the desks where I'd built campaigns, coached interns, saved deals. Past the break room where I once celebrated a birthday no one remembered. Past faces that refused to look up. No one stopped me. No one said a word. As I stepped into the elevator between the 2 security guards, I felt something strange. Not shame. Not fear. Not even sadness. Relief. Like someone finally named out loud what I'd known for a long time. This place was never going to see me. As the elevator doors closed, I looked at my reflection in the mirrored wall. My eyes were clear. My jaw was steady. And somewhere deep inside me, a spark had been lit. Small. Controlled. But growing. They thought they were ending something. They had no idea what they'd just started. I didn't cry. Not on the elevator ride down. Not on the sidewalk outside. Not when I got home and stared at my half-empty living room like I didn't recognize it. I just sat. On the floor. In silence. It felt like waking up from a long sleep where you didn't realize you were dreaming until you're suddenly not. You stretch your limbs and feel all the places where you've been cramped, compressed, ignored. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not my friends. Not my parents. Not Sierra. Not even Tyson, the recruiter from the Zoom call. I needed a day, maybe two, to feel the echo of that moment, to taste the humiliation, and then to spit it out. On the third day, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Grady, one of my clients, a VP at a logistics firm in Nevada. We'd worked together for almost 2 years. He was sharp, no nonsense, but always respectful. The kind of guy who said what he meant. Hey Blair, heard something weird from Farrowan. You still running our account? I stared at the message. They hadn't told him. Of course they hadn't. I replied, not anymore. I was let go. Not fired. Not terminated. Just let go. 2 minutes later, he called. Let go? Are you kidding me? Nope. Who's taking over our file? No idea. There was a long pause. Then he said, very quietly, yeah, that's not gonna work for me. He hung up. That was the start. Over the next week, it happened again. And again. And again. First Grady. Then Celeste, the CEO of an e-commerce brand in Denver. Then the two brothers from the biotech firm in Boise who always sent me Christmas cards with terrible puns. They were all leaving. Each one reached out to me directly, through LinkedIn, through my website, which I hadn't updated in years, through friends of friends. They wanted to know where I was going. If I was available. If I was okay. It stunned me. Because all those years, I'd been told I was replaceable. That no one is bigger than the company. That it's not about the individual, it's about the brand. But here they were, one by one, walking away from the brand because I was no longer part of it. And Farrowan? They panicked. I know this because people started talking. Quietly. Off the record. I got a call from Emma, a junior analyst who used to sit near me. She said there were emergency meetings, client churn reports flashing red, and Alora's voice echoing behind closed doors like a siren on loop. Apparently, someone from the exec team asked, why the hell are they leaving? And someone else said, because they were here for her. Me. They were there because of me. It wasn't just business. It never had been. I answered their late-night emails. I showed up for their launches. I calmed them down when they were about to pull a $300,000 campaign because of one bad review. I listened to them. I gave a damn. Farrowan gave them slideshows. I gave them trust. The company couldn't rebuild that in a week. Or a quarter. Or maybe ever. And me? I still hadn't reached out to Alora. I hadn't gloated. I hadn't posted cryptic subtweets. I hadn't responded to the emails her assistant sent, asking if I was open to a conversation. Let them wonder. Let them sit in the same silence they once gave me. Meanwhile, Tyson reached out again. The offer from Sierra's firm in Seattle was still open, but now there was a twist. He said, some of your former clients called us. They're saying they'll only work with us if you lead their accounts. I blinked at the screen. I didn't expect that. I didn't demand it. But they did it anyway. Loyalty. The real kind. And just like that, the balance shifted. Quietly. Completely. I packed my things the next morning. Portland in spring looks like it's trying to apologize for winter. Green leaves everywhere, soft light cutting through gray skies like forgiveness. I took one last walk down Alberta Street, grabbed a coffee from my favorite place, and got in my car. As I crossed the bridge out of town, I looked in the rearview mirror. Not out of nostalgia. Just to say goodbye to the woman I used to be. She gave too much for too little. The woman driving now. She was done being a ghost. Seattle didn't feel like a fresh start. Not right away. It felt like stepping onto solid ground after months lost at sea, disoriented, unsteady, soaked to the bone. I didn't land in some perfect, glamorous life. There were no welcome balloons. No magical office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a corner espresso bar. But what there was something I hadn't felt in years: oxygen. My new firm, Rivari North, was smaller than Farrowan. Boutique. Selective. The kind of place where quality wasn't just a word they put on their homepage. People knew each other's birthdays, asked real questions in meetings, and actually waited for the answers. On my first day, they gave me a real onboarding. Not just a packet and a password, but a walkthrough, a welcome lunch, even a handwritten note on my desk from the CEO, Celine Revel, who, unlike Alora, didn't pretend she was too busy to know who worked for her. Celine had presence, the kind you don't need to announce. In our first one-on-one, she leaned forward, looked me right in the eyes, and said, "We hired you because clients trust you. So we trust you. Build what you need. Tell us what works. And if we fail together." Together. What a foreign concept. I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to belong to something without having to shrink myself first. I started small. Rebuilt the Trask account from scratch. Rewrote strategies that had been rotting under Farrowin's template-heavy playbook for years. I took calls at 7 a.m., coached junior associates after hours, and when I didn't know something, I said it out loud. No fear of being seen as weak. And slowly, things began to move. Clients didn't just stay. They brought friends. Referrals came in with my name on their lips. My inbox, which used to be a source of stress, now felt like a window, opening wider every week. I got promoted within 2 months. Not because I asked. Because they noticed. Rovari gave me my own team. Small at first, 2 account managers and a strategist, but hungry. Like I used to be. Only this time, I was the one making sure they didn't burn out in silence. One evening, I stayed late with Mallory, a junior on my team, working through a tricky campaign presentation. She looked up from her laptop and said, "Sorry, I'm just not used to a manager who actually listens." I smiled. A soft, tired smile. I know exactly what that feels like. Outside of work, life was still catching up. I moved into a small loft near Capitol Hill. Nothing fancy, but it had sunlight, plants that stayed alive, and walls that didn't carry old ghosts. I started sleeping through the night again. My stomach stopped nodding at the sound of email notifications. I even began writing again, something I hadn't done since college. Just small things. Fragments. Thoughts. Healing in ink. Some of them, I printed and pinned above my desk. One said, "Loyalty means nothing when it's demanded. Everything when it's earned." Sometimes I'd catch myself rereading that line on hard days. Not because I doubted where I was, but because I remembered exactly what it took to get here. There was no vengeance plan. No big speech. No moment where I walked into Farrowin's office in slow motion while Alora looked on in horror. That's not how real life works. But there was a ripple. A quiet one. The kind that turns into a wave, long after you've left the shore. And maybe that was enough. Because now I wasn't surviving. I was building. My voice wasn't shaking anymore. It was clear. Solid. Mine. And in the stillness of that realization, somewhere between a client call and a quiet cup of tea at home, I understood something important. Success doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just breathes. Steady. And undeniable. It came on a Tuesday. One of those bright, brisk Seattle mornings when the sky feels like glass, clear but cold, reflecting everything back at you. I was in the middle of reviewing a quarterly report when my assistant, Remy, knocked gently on my office door. "You have a LinkedIn message. Thought you'd want to see it." She handed me her iPad, screen turned toward me. I recognized the name before I even finished reading it. Alora Hastings. Her profile hadn't changed much. Same professional headshot. Same airbrushed headline about leadership and strategic growth. But the message? It was short, measured, controlled, the way only people who are not in control tend to write. "Hi Blair. I hope you're well. I've heard from a few people about the work you've been doing at Rovari. Sounds like things are going really well. I was wondering if you'd be open to a call. We're undergoing some transitions at Farrowin, and I'd value your perspective. Let me know. Bess." Alora. I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. Just still. I imagined her in her glass office, the one where she slid my termination papers across the desk like a receipt for wasted loyalty, now sitting in that same chair, maybe for the first time realizing what she'd lost. Not because I was irreplaceable, but because respect is. And once it's gone, it doesn't come back with a phone call. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. Not because I was holding a grudge. But because she no longer had access to me. She had thrown away a person she thought was powerless, and now that she saw the weight of my absence, she wanted the version of me who hadn't unlearned obedience. But that woman didn't exist anymore. Weeks passed. Projects bloomed. My team grew. I was invited to speak at a leadership summit in Chicago. The topic was retention through trust. I told them a story. Not mine directly, but close enough. About a woman who gave everything to a company that only saw her as a resource, who was called disloyal for daring to explore what she deserved, and who, after being discarded, built something better with her own hands. I watched the room shift as I spoke. Heads nodded. Eyes met mine with something raw. Recognition. Maybe even release. Because it wasn't just my story. It was theirs too. After the talk, a young woman approached me. Nervous. Clutching her notebook like a life raft. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. How did you know it was time to leave?" I thought about it for a moment. "I didn't," I said. "They made the decision for me. But the truth is, I'd already left a long time ago. They just caught up to it." She exhaled, like someone had just opened a window in her ribcage. Now, when I walk into our office, glass doors, plants thriving in every corner, the low hum of a team that trusts each other, I carry no bitterness. Just clarity. Alora is a name I don't speak anymore. Fairowyn is a place I no longer think about. Not because I'm pretending they didn't happen, but because they no longer define me. That version of me, tired, invisible, afraid to take up space, she's gone. Buried beneath every decision I made after they told me I wasn't loyal. And the woman who stands here now? She doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. She already did.